Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to episode 3 of the SMB Labs podcast, presented by 910 West. We experiment with small business so you don't have to. Today's guest is Diana Elarde. And now, here's your host, Jasmine Holmes.
So we've done episodes previously talking about ways that we get it in our own way. So sometimes when you're not getting where you want to go in terms of goals and success, how sometimes it is because of unconscious things that we're doing to ourselves. And one of those places that seems to manifest for most people, and perhaps one of the places that we're the least aware of it, is around money. So today, we have with us Diana Elarde, who is an expert in many things, and I will let her introduce herself and tell us all about the many hats she wears. But specifically, she's going to talk to us about beliefs around money and how we can be self-sabotaging to some degree. So Diana, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate it. Well, you're right. I do have a broad background. I spent early part of my career in higher ed, teaching primarily psychology, and then kind of took a left turn and spent almost 25 years in sales and sales management. And then when I moved to Arizona here in 2011, went back into higher education over at Mesa Community College and have been teaching psychology there. I'm also a writer. So I write for a publication called Thrive After 50. And the last part of what I do is work with people on unconscious belief systems, which are so prevalent in our money issues. So that's kind of a check on my background as to how this all came about. Was kind of an interesting aspect. I was asked to speak by a financial group to a regional meeting. Mm-hmm. And I started playing around with what was going on with money. Well, after I came to Arizona, I somewhat had my own journey in regards to money. And there were a couple of things that happened that kind of came together. I was asked by a large it's a national financial advisory company to come speak at one of their regional meetings. And one of the issues that they did want to look at were different trends that were going on with money. So as I started researching this area, I somewhat looked at what was going on with myself and my husband on money issues. That we had, well, I guess you could say semi-retired, like a lot of people our age. And my feeling was always there wasn't enough money. I would look at the paychecks that I was making that were far less than what I had made before. And so I kept saying to my husband, not enough money coming here. We don't have enough money. And he kept saying, how can that be? We have enough money. Well, as it turned out, interesting enough, he was zigging, I was zagging, so to speak, in the sense that I'm looking at the money coming in. He's looking at the money that we've saved, which was more than appropriate to start pulling from at this point. Meanwhile, I'm like, no, you don't touch that money. That's the sacred money for when you retire. And it's like, oh, I forgot to transition. I was letting my unconscious beliefs as to what money was for and how money came in interfere. And that really started to blossom into, let's design an assessment that really looks at what's going on from a priority point of view. What are we thinking of in terms of money, and how often are we thinking about it?
Oh, okay.
And so that was kind of the first step that I developed in regards to looking at money. That was the presentation I did, looking at unconscious beliefs on money. And the fact is that research proved to be one major thing is that we're not talking about money. We don't talk to ourselves about money. We don't talk to our spouses, or if we do talk to ourselves or our spouses or significant others, it's many times in anger. You spent all the money, or I spent all the money. And we always swear to ourselves, I'm not going to do it again. And then we turn around and do it again. So how does that start to happen? Why is that? And part of that, when we look at what goes on with our brain, we do a really great job at telling ourselves what we don't want, particularly with money. I don't want to live in poverty.
Yeah.
We don't tell ourselves what we want to have happen. And I equate it like this. Pardon?
I was going to say, we were stuck in a place of scarcity rather than abundance.
Right. And an easy way to look at what we're saying to ourselves is think of it this way. If I was to give you, Jasmine, directions to my house, I wouldn't say, whatever you do, don't turn on Val Vista. Whatever you do, don't go to Greenfield. But that's what we tell ourselves on a constant basis. This is what I don't want.
Yeah.
But we need to make it clear what we do want. The other thing that I think is very important is for people to have calm conversations in regards to money, rather than accusing the other person of certain types of behavior, looking at how do we stay calm in regards to the money aspect of it.
Gotcha. So, and when we first started this conversation, you had mentioned that you feel that businesses have some perhaps unique, or this manifests as it's specifically in businesses in some way. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about where you see this affecting businesses, because I've worked with enough businesses that I myself have seen evidence of that as well.
Yes, I could call this a tale of two companies, actually. Interesting enough, in my career, I worked primarily for a company in Denver for close to 20 years, but I had a stint with another company for a few years out of Ohio. Interesting enough, the owners of both these companies had very similar backgrounds. They had both grown up in poverty. They both lost a mother when they were very young. They both were in industries that required sales and then started their own company. The difference became 20 years later, one of the people sold his company for probably close to $100 million. The other person had to sell his company and become an employee within that company. The difference, boy, it was right there in the commission plan. The first gentleman that I worked with that had sold his company for so much money, 15 years, maybe 2 commission plan changes in that time. The other person, boy, anytime he knew that you were close to a big deal, he would change commission plans. And so many things happened. It was a result from that. He had trouble keeping people. They resented the fact that they were bringing business in and then feeling like they were penalized at the last minute for bringing that business in. The other aspect just became in forecasting. Many times in regards to forecasting, he couldn't forecast how many employees was he going to need to adequately supply services for the new clients that were coming in. So there were a lot of ramifications on this, but the bottom line was it really corrupted the sense of trust with the sales force, and they ended up leaving because of it. And equivalently, I did. I just realized the first year that I was with him, I made President's Club. It was a little on the angry side of that, and said kind of like, oh, I should have set the bar higher for you. And he set the bar, I didn't. But the bottom line became his discomfort. It was almost what I call a poverty consciousness.
Okay.
It wasn't enough for all of us, so I better make sure there's enough for me. Where the other gentleman didn't have that. It was, we're going to share, there's enough business out there, all of us are making money, and all of us did make money. And that retention was there with employees, which was most importantly. People felt highly about him. They felt that they were in a really good atmosphere to grow and to be able to develop. And that's one way that you see it. Many times I'll see it in issues like collections, where people will have trouble collecting from clients, or even setting the cost of, for their materials or their services. They feel very funny about that. They have a hard time. They go back and forth. No, it's this. Maybe it should be this. Maybe I should discount. And we all know what happens when we start discounting our services below market value.
It's a short race to the bottom. Yes.
It is. And, people don't feel that if you don't have value in your company, then why should they? And so those are the type of ways that you see it manifest in a business environment.
Yeah, it's that uncomfortable belief that I'm not good enough, I don't deserve this, and so that's where we tend.
Yes.
I
Yes.
can say that I definitely struggled with that early in my business, and I think a lot of new business owners especially, because it's, you're still kind of figuring things out, and maybe you don't quite have, like I said, the confidence, you don't have the clients under the belt, and that's, as a result, you see rampant underpricing, and the smart ones discover very quickly that that's not going to work, because they're essentially working for almost nothing per hour. But yeah, that's
yes. Well, and part of that too is sometimes what we need to do is set up processes so we know where we're going. So we understand that if I have to make a collection call, what does that look like for the first call? What does that look like for the second call? And if I'm uncomfortable making that call, then going inside and questioning, why is that? What message here am I sending to myself that's being conveyed when I make that call? I mean, yeah, collection calls are always uncomfortable to a sense of it, but on the other side of the coin, if we're reluctant to make them, we do need to come to grips of where is this coming from? The other thing that I see many times, and I see this with women, in the statistics for women right now in terms of money, they're pretty startling. I mean, 40% of women across the country believe that they don't make, and this may be true, but they don't make enough money to save. So we see that stat playing out. We see women we know that women over 50, 80% of them that lose their husbands either to divorce or to death will live in poverty for the rest of their lives. I hear a lot of times from women that, I just can't figure out what to do to save. And financial advisors scare me.
Okay.
And it is surprising. I know women that have put together multi-million-dollar deals. So obviously, they know how to work with numbers.
Yeah.
But they can't take the first step into investing in their own retirement because they find it confusing, or they want to avoid the topic, or many times both men and women are so embarrassed by what they think they should have saved or what they should have in the bank and what they don't have in the bank.
Sure. So that vulnerability and sort of some shame around. Well, and we're told from a young age, you don't talk about money, politics, and religion, right? And so it's so ingrained in us that, and I think that's something that needs to change. I've always been fortunate in that I am comfortable talking about it, but a lot of people are not. And there's no way to if you're not willing to talk about it, you can't know if you're on the right track, if you're not, like, really, where's that going? Like, be frank and open. And it's that vulnerability conversation too, right? It's being able to.
It definitely is. Yeah, it definitely is. Even between, one of the subjects that I see a lot with is, as parents age, they may need assistance with their money, and yet they don't want to even tell their kids or one of their kids or any of the kids how much money is in the bank, where it is. And this can be a very difficult type of situation for people to handle. I know for me, it was a process when my dad became ill a few years ago, where it became very obvious that that was something he was going to have to give up, having to incorporate in my life their financial responsibilities and be able to have frank conversations of where's life insurance or where's the savings and all.
So absolutely, it's fascinating to hear all these different ways. And I think there's a lot of triggers that's probably connecting, some more so than others. But I think for just about anybody listening to this interview, there's probably one or two of those things that they're checking off their box and saying, yeah, that's me, or I see that happening. And I would say really anybody who feels like their finances are not where they want them to be. So whether they feel like they have more debt than they want, or they're not able to reach a goal, whether it's retirement or buying a house, that would be somebody that there be an indication that there's something else going on there. So let's talk a little bit about what are some things we can do to help overcome these unconscious beliefs that we can do ourselves, and then at what point do you start to say, you know what, I think I need some outside help, like I'm trying and I'm still not getting where I want to go?
Sure. The first thing is awareness. Looking at what am I saying about money? What am I thinking about money? So, for example, do I have any discrepancies in how I feel? I tell this story many times of my dad, who would talk about his grandmother who lived in New Orleans, had her own business back in the 20s and made a lot of money. And he had a lot of admiration for her. On the same sense, he would always say to us, my grandmother always said, those people that made a lot of money were crooks. Okay, Dad. We heard this message over and over again. And I was probably in my 40s before my dad said this to me one day. And I looked at him and I said, Dad, your grandmother made a lot of money. What does it say about her? And I could see him just totally stop in his tracks. And he had never thought about the mixed message that was in those two little stories. And so us looking at what kind of mixed messages did we pick up? You know, a lot of this is tied in with our belief systems. What did our parents believe? Many of us that were kids, parents raised during the Depression, our parents had a lot of fear in association with money. So am I fearing money? And is that a reasonable fear?
Yes.
And so questioning those type of things is where we want to start. So once I challenge your belief system, then I need to look at how do I get beyond it. And if I want to do it on my own, then I have to examine the validity of that belief. And most importantly, decide what I want to replace it with. Now, being focused on then what you want will help in the process. If that's not working, then obviously looking at someone like myself that has techniques, that I work with people all the time on unconscious belief systems and helping them to overcome those belief systems, maybe something that person wants to explore. Generally in a pretty fast session, we can quickly get to where a person wants to go for money and then help to support that for them. So those would be my recommendations.
Gotcha. And so tell me a little bit about your process, because you mentioned your assessment earlier. I'm assuming that is part of what you do with folks who want to work with you?
Yes. I have two different assessments that we can work with, either one on a personal basis looking at money, or if it's a business owner and they want to look at what might be affecting their business, we can do that. Once we look at what comes out in those assessments, then at that point we can formulate a plan of what do we need to work with. And as I said, many times with small businesses, what I see come up is the collection aspect of it and charging.
Okay.
So there are a couple of things that I can work with. Then we can set up processes, which would be more than appropriate to help a person. The other aspect is working with my process of Psych K, which is examining what unconscious beliefs are, working at replacing that belief with a belief system that we do want, and enforcing that through what we call whole brain postures.
Okay.
So it's a fairly simple process on helping to reinforce on an unconscious basis where we want to go with it.
Oh, excellent. And that's called Psych K to use?
Psych K, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's, you could view it as a combination of working with the unconscious belief systems through psychology and also looking at proven movements that can be incorporated for whole brain health.
Okay, interesting.
Yes. Yeah, so when you get that push-pull type of situation, making money is good, no, making money is bad, making money is good, we can help to unify that process so that your unconscious system is on the same page and then smoothly moving forward to help you incorporate it.
Absolutely. Well, and that goes back to where we started this conversation, which is really those we call it self-sabotaging, but it's really just the unconscious, that part of our brain that we're so not aware of.
Right.
And you sit back and you look at something and you're like, why did I just do that? Like that makes no sense whatsoever. And so it's a powerful, to me, the unconscious brain has always been amazing because it's there all the time and we have no idea, but it affects us in so many ways. And so it
does. I mean, now with brain imaging, it used to be years ago, 30 years ago in psychology, we would teach the whole thing with unconscious brain and Freud, but yet we had no real proof that that's what was going on. Yeah. Now we know from studies with cognitive psychology, we know that almost 90% of our decisions every day are made on an unconscious basis. And for most of us, that's a little unnerving. I mean, gosh, who wants to think that we're not really aware of it? But think about those times where we have driven home from, say, work or someplace that we know, and we're turning on our block and we're like, wait a minute, I don't even remember getting on the 202 or turning on Greenfield or Higley or any of those roads. How is it that I managed to get here? Yeah. We, even in terms of things like food, we say to ourselves, today I start my diet, and by 10 o'clock, we're like, what's this donut doing in my hand? I don't even remember picking it up.
Yeah.
So many of our times it's good in a sense because our brain couldn't process constant new information or constant new beliefs.
Yeah.
And the brain's primary purpose is to keep us safe. So if you're alive and kicking today, the brain is kind of like, my person's alive. I really don't need to take on anything else. And so, the brain is really a little bit reluctant to want to take on new beliefs that might challenge it. Yeah.
Well, that clearly explains why so many of us are resistant to change as well, right? Because
absolutely,
all new behaviors to learn. And I had heard that before with habits, and where if you really want to change if you're doing something you don't want to do or you want to form a new habit, it's really you've got to have a replacement for it. Like just the same that cold turkey just doesn't work. You've got to have some kind of alternative to sort of rewire the brain.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Studies more and more show us that.
So if somebody's listening to this podcast and they're saying, wow, I got to learn more, how would they find you? So tell us your company name, website.
Sure. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'd love to. They can find me off my website, which is Emerging Insights Group. .com. So that will lead them to me. And at my website, they can see the multiple platforms that I work off of. They can certainly email me. A quick and easy email for me is Diana, Diana, at insight11.com.
Okay.
So those are the two main ways they could get me, or I can leave my phone, which is 888-658-4627.
Excellent. Well, we'll include links and all that information in the notes with this as well. So if somebody wants to click the link, you don't have to be madly typing those notes down. We'll make sure we've included those links to your website. So definitely, if what we've talked about today has struck a chord with you, or you're seeing that you're feeling like you're not quite getting ahead in your business, like you said, if you've got a very large open invoice report, give that sounds like that's one of the, I've struggled with that, and not so much on the collection side, but definitely like, how do you manage that? And we just did a big process and it was huge. So something that can really turn your business around. We're going to pay much faster. And let me tell you, it makes me a lot happier. So
Exactly. Yeah, it's such an important aspect of it. And the thing is, it's not just the monetary aspect that gets impacted when we have collections. It's also that whole self-concept, that confidence that we have of, should I be doing this? Should I have my own business? I can't seem to even get people to pay me. And, so getting that personal element out where we get to beat ourselves up over is really important.
Excellent. So we always like to close the show by asking one question of all of our guests. And so that is, how do you stay passionate about your business? So really, like, what motivates you? What makes you excited to get out of the bed each and every morning?
What really makes me excited is the multi-platforms that I work off of. And the bottom line for me is really helping people to stay present and out of fear in everything I do, be it my writing, be it any type of work I do, teaching, any aspect of that. What I want people to understand is that we do have choices, and we wonder why people seem to get angry so fast, and why we have road rage and a lot of these different types of things. And we've elevated our level of stress in our society. So we can calm down the brain, get it to a more peaceful place, then all of us will be better problem solvers, we'll lead a happier life, and more importantly, we'll have a lot more peace in our lives.
Oh,
that drives me every day.
Well, that is a great way to end us, because I think we could all use a little bit more peace in our lives. So thank you so much, Diana Elarde with Emerging Insights. We appreciate you having this conversation with us.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
We hope you enjoyed episode 3 of the SMB Labs podcast presented by 910 West. If you'd like to learn more from Diana, please see our show notes at 910west.com. Remember, if you like this podcast, don't forget to share it with your friends. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.